here we go. We've got our part 2 mock draft on our way and commence. Right, so as you guys already know, the pick, obviously, that's not changing is Caleb Williams to the Chicago Bears. And as I've said before, you would have told me at least 3 months ago this would not have been an ideal fit. But now with you've got offensive pieces, you're building up an offensive line. I like 2 of 3 of their offensive linemen. I think they could probably get a couple more here later on into the draft. But I do like this pick for Chicago. I'm going Caleb Williams at 1. Number 2, because I've been hearing an awful lot about this with the Washington Commanders, I'm going to flip-flop this one, and I'm going to take Drake May to the Commanders because many people are basically saying he's big, he's strong, he's a Justin Herbert-esque type of quarterback that if you have a terrible O-line like Washington, you could take the hits, you could take a lot of this stuff, and not to mention you've got weapons and an offense outside of tight end. Between Brian Robinson Jr., Austin Eckler, Terry McLaurin, and Jahan Dotson, I think if you go and get a tight end either in the 2nd or 3rd round, this team could definitely look good on offense. I'll take Drake May at 2. 3 overall pick. This is where Jaden Daniels will end up going to the New England Patriots. Now, it's an interesting fit, but I think if Gerard Mayo is in fact the coach that many people are saying, not as defensive like Belichick, but maybe somebody who basically can work with a lot of strengths with their offensive pieces. Jaden Daniels, as you know, very elusive. New England, they have a good, not a great offensive line, but he can be elusive, he can move out of the pocket, and he can escape out of danger. I'll take him at 3. Pick, and because the Arizona Cardinals ended up selling the block with their number 4 pick, they go ahead and they draft Marvin Harrison Jr. because in the end, you need to give Kyler Murray a weapon after he lost Rondale Moore, he lost DeAndre Hopkins, he lost a lot of receivers. But I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is the clear pick because you're not going to settle for anybody that's less than that. In the first mock draft, I had them trading that pick because they wanted about 3 first-round picks. You were already going to get the 11th and the 23rd, and then you have the 27th. So you got plenty of first-round picks. I think this is kind of a sell to block the number 4 pick so that they could get Marvin Harrison Jr. without question, and that's where I think the Cardinals go. Things get interesting, and so the LA Chargers end up trading away the number 5 pick to the Minnesota Vikings, and the Vikings will take J.J. McCarthy at 5. And the reason of this is not a big-time reach. This is not something that I think, a lot of people are going to be kind of used to, but I think J.J. McCarthy at 5 kind of feels a little bit more safer and much more sure. Not to mention, too, the cost of the contract kind of goes down. You have to think about that as well. It might be about a couple million that goes down. But at the same time, Minnesota is still going to stick with their successor, and they'll take J.J. McCarthy. Are not shying away from this pick at all. I still have them taking Malik Neighbors. I do think that, again, they need a playmaker at wide receiver. I don't like the fact that you've got Daniel Jones as your quarterback, even though Marcus Spears ended up basically saying that Malik read the quarterback room and knows exactly what he is expecting. So I'm going to take Malik Neighbors with the Giants at number 6. But eventually the Giants, they're going to have to figure out quarterback. I think he realizes that, but I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue. 7 pick is obvious, and I'm going with Joe Alt. I think at the same time, they need an offensive lineman. Joe Alt is definitely the answer for their offensive line and for their tackle position, because Brian Callahan, being the offensive coordinating coach, he needs to make Will Levis work, and they need to end up getting better. And they need him to get cooking, and they need him to get going. And I think that's exactly what the Titans are willing to do. I still got Joe Alt there at 7. Interesting one. I apologize for many people because of just kind of some technical difficulties. But however, the Atlanta Falcons, I mentioned in the first mock draft they would take Jared Verse. I'm going to flip that over, and I think that the Falcons will take Dallas Turner. It's an interesting one, but they're still going to take an edge rusher. I think at the same time, the Falcons already got their quarterback. They've already got an offense, and I think at the very least, Dallas Turner, much like Jared Verse, you're still going to at the very least get an edge rusher, and I think you're still going to end up getting that kind of pick with that kind of talent, and I think Dallas Turner, he'll still be that pick. Trade alert with the Chicago Bears. And now this time the Chargers end up trading from the 11th to the 9th to the Chicago Bears because the Bears are playing patient pick. This time I think the Chargers at number 9, they take Brock Bowers because the Jets, they are trying to prevent them from taking a great college prospect in Brock Bowers. Now, I've been talking about this for several times before Keenan Allen got traded. You know what you're going to get with Brock Bowers being arguably one of the greatest college prospects in the country. The fact that his body build, his explosiveness, and his abilities to get more yards after the catch. But he also does give you really good, excellent blocks. He gives you excellent, bubble route and screen types of routes to get you open, even in midfield. I think the Chargers could be willing to work with that, and I think Brock Bowers is exactly the pick that I think you move up with, and thank God the Chicago Bears were there up at the 9th pick. Here's an interesting pick with the Jets, because if you don't end up getting Brock Bowers, then the very least that you can do is get another receiver. I see them taking Rome Odunze, because at the same time, yeah, you got Garrett Wilson. Yeah, you got Mike Williams. But sometimes you're going to need to get an extra receiver for insurance purposes. And I think Rome Odunze is perfectly that kind of guy. I love his work ethic. I don't think he kind of runs beautiful routes, but he runs them good enough to where he can make contested catches. He's willing to get better. And I think at the same time, the Jets, they are definitely going to be pivoting up on the offensive end. I got the Jets taking Rome Odunze. Now, the Chicago Bears, as I've said, this is a flip-flop for them when it came to Dallas Turner. In the first one, I'm going to have the Chicago Bears taking Jared Verse, because you are still going to have to get that secondary edge rusher next to Montez Sweat so that you could at the very least get 2 defensive edge rushers feasting and getting the defense to now play hard ball. You've already got Caleb Williams, and you got him a decent offensive weaponry. So at this point, keep the defense consistent, and either it would be Dallas Turner or at this point, Jared Verse. Either one of them is going to succeed at this point. Famous I've stuck with out here in the Denver area where I live at, and they are still screaming out Bo Nix that I think could be taken by the Broncos. I think it's perfect for this point, because for a small quarterback who is accurate, I think could also throw the deep ball at goodwill. Sean Payton is definitely going to shape up his skill set and make him a better, yet more capable and more productive offensive quarterback. And so I think Bo Nix is definitely the pick, and he's definitely the right answer for someone like Sean Payton. Now, instead of taking the corner like the Raiders did, I see the Raiders in a trade situation, trade with the Cincinnati Bengals for that 13th pick, And the Raiders are kind of patient, but the Cincinnati Bengals, because they've lost some offensive line play, they go and they draft the Penn State offensive lineman Olu Fashanu. I think you definitely, because with Joe Burrow out for the entirety of the season last year, you need to fix up that offensive line, and you need to fix it quickly because, again, I know that they're kind of scared when it comes to offense with their pieces and depending on what happens with T. Higgins. But you need to start strengthening up that offensive line. Time is ticking. You've got to be quicker than that. But Olu Fashanu, I love him as a tackle because of the body build, the strength, and more of just the consistent play that he had at Penn State with allowing Drew Aller to basically have a clean pocket. I like this pick for the Bengals to go for at 13. So the New Orleans Saints, they are not shying away at offensive line, but I do think they take Talise Fuaga over at Oregon State because they're going to need to refresh that offensive line. It's building slowly but surely. It's still stable. It's still good. But at the same time, I think if you get Fuaga, because I had them taking Fashanu in the first one, but this second time around, I think Fuaga's a pretty damn good prospect. And I think the Saints, because they need help on offensive line, just to give Derek Carr a little bit more time to cook in the pocket, I think Fuaga would definitely be my secondary pick there. Indianapolis Colts, because the Raiders ended up trading down on their pick, they are going to take Terrion Arnold from Alabama, another corner. Yeah, they're not shying away from corners at all. Now you get another really good man-to-man corner with Terrion Arnold. And at the same time, the Colts, they have a defensive schematic that they really want to be shut down and man-to-man for their corners and then play a little bit more of some cover ball between their safeties and maybe one floating corner in the backfield. But I think Terrion Arnold, he'll give you exactly the stops. And like I said, I think this is a really good secondary pick. If, in fact, the Raiders end up trading down and he's available, I think Arnold would be a pretty damn good pick. Trade alert from here, and the Chargers are doing it again, and this time they're trading the 23rd pick with the Seattle Seahawks because the Seahawks, they're not in desperation mode, but I think the Chargers were very smart to end up trading back up into those picks, and I think in the 16th pick, they take Brian Thomas II from LSU because not only are you getting a double whammy with Brock Bowers, but you're also getting a double whammy with Brian Thomas II because think of it, if the Chargers do sign Tyler Boyd, you're going to want to keep beefing up on offense and getting some offensive pieces. I think this is a pretty damn good pick because if he was still available, the Jags would have taken him. But Brian Thomas, I think he's pretty efficient. You get a secondary LSU receiver. If Malik Neighbors, they do not take him at 5. This is a very good secondary pick for the Chargers. Jaguars have not changed their pick. I still take Keon Coleman for the receiving core because even though, yes, with Christian Kirk and now Gabe Davis, it's the same thing that I've been saying about with Rome Odunze. I think you definitely need an insurance package from there, and I think Keon Coleman is probably the best option as a slot receiver that the Jags could definitely use because they need to get offense going with some firepower. So if you get that stacked offense next to Houston, and who knows what happens now with the Titans and with the Colts, this is where the Jags basically want the last laugh in the division. Now, the traded pick that the Raiders have basically traded down with, instead of taking Terrion Arnold at 13, I have them taking Quinion Mitchell. They've been talking about this now for the last couple of days. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Quinion Mitchell is this year's Tariq Woolen, who I think is a ball hawk, somebody who basically makes you uncomfortable when it comes to man-to-man coverage, and at the same time, he acclimates to speed. He'll work a little bit more on his cover abilities, but I think you're going to get a lot with, Quinion Mitchell, and I think this is a good secondary pick for the Raiders if, in fact, they do trade down. Now, I know I had the LA Rams in the last draft that I had them taking Byron Murphy. This time, I think they take Liatula too, because ultimately you're going to have a guy who's, I would say, is along the same caliber as far as physicality, elusiveness, like a Micah Parsons. And so the Rams will get their version of Micah Parsons in Liatula too. I love the fact that he can basically roll out from the offensive line. He can bust through and basically kind of fool you in some areas, and that's what they needed to fill after they've lost Aaron Donald. They need somebody who's going to be a juice to the defense and really a juice to the organization and the team as a whole, because Sean McVay loves guys that are very hyped up, they're very energetic, and I think Liatula too, he's kind of the perfect fit there. Pittsburgh Steelers are not changing from offensive tackle, but instead I have them taking Amarius Mims, because at the same time, if you've got Russell Wilson and you know he cannot see from over that line, but you need to give him extra time to basically throw in the pocket, Amarius Mims is another one that the Georgia product, he basically gives you some very good and efficient coverage. And Georgia, when you look at Carson Beck, you look at their previous quarterback that they've had in the past, they had some very good pocket presence time. And so in the end, Russell Wilson, he's another one that you need to basically defend and to block. And I think at the same time, you need to make it efficient for Najee Harris or even for Jaylen Warren to basically run the football. So I think this is perfect for the Steelers. Now, the Miami Dolphins, because with the corner that's taken, I see them taking Kool-Aid McKinstry, because having him and having Jalen Ramsey in the corners position, because after losing Xavier Howard and Javon Holland having a hell of a season that he did this past year, I think the Dolphins definitely make sense for Kool-Aid. I said it in the last one that I thought Philadelphia would be a pretty good wild card from there. But I think Miami, they don't panic. They take a corner, and I think Kool-Aid, he's available. You better bet that the Dolphins are going to end up taking him. As I'd said before, I would be moving him up and into the draft. So I moved up Nate Wiggins upward, and I have him going to the Eagles. Now, Nate Wiggins is somebody that I think is almost like a C.J. Gardner-Johnson-esque type player, but at least that corner room is going to be stacked for the Eagles because they get CJ back. I don't think he'll be the same as he once was, but you're still going to get efficiency with him. And Darius Slay, I think this is also a very good kind of move-off package, because depending if James Bradbury does not end up playing to the caliber that he once was, this is actually a pretty good replacement from here. Seattle Seahawks end up taking with the traded pick, and this might shock everybody, but I have the Seahawks taking Chop Robinson, because in the end, if you've got Uchenna Nwosu and you ended up losing Poona Ford and you lost, one of their best defensive tackles, you go and you get another one. You go and get Chop Robinson. Now, as an edge rusher between him and Uchenna Nwosu, this is actually a pretty damn good fit, because what was the one thing Mike McDonald really, really liked? He loved the edge rushing presence that Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen was able to produce in Baltimore. Well, I think in this kind of setting for Seattle, you're going to do the same thing, and I think Chop Robinson kind of seems like an ideal fit. Do not be surprised if this is where Seattle goes with their pick. Now, of course, as I've got my man right down there watching this, I have the Dallas Cowboys. I had him in the last draft. I had him taking an offensive tackle. I have them taking it again, but this time it's not Tyler Guyton, it's J.C. Latham. I think Latham really does serve as you've got Tyler Smith on one side. You need to figure out the other side, because in the end, it's basically go out with a boom or nothing with Dak Prescott. And so the only way to do this is you've got to protect the line, and eventually they're going to have to go and get another receiver in the second round, which is kind of what they're looking for. But I think you got to solidify that line very quickly and very fast, because sometimes the longer you wait with offensive lines, like in this league, they don't last for very long. Okay, so in the next pick, I still have the Green Bay Packers solidifying their safety, and they still go and get Cooper DeJean. He's just an ideal, perfect fit. And at the same time, after losing a player like Xavier McKinney and a couple others, I think ultimately Cooper DeJean is going to serve as that kind of physicality safety, but somebody that I think the Packers would definitely love to have. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because not getting Chop Robinson like they did in the last draft, I have them taking Byron Murphy II, because in the end, they've lost a ton as far as their defensive presence, but I think you formulate from the line, you maybe go and get an edge rusher in the second round, but Byron Murphy, you are going to have him serve as a defensive tackle that's going to make it so uncomfortable for the offense from both running the football and at the same time going for passes. I think this is actually low-key an ideal fit if this really, really does happen for Tampa Bay. Now, the Arizona Cardinals on their 27th pick, because in the end, they still are going to take an offensive lineman, and now this time I have them taking Tyler Guyton. And I do think because you need to protect Kyler Murray at all costs, you gave him arguably the best receiver in his class in Marvin Harrison Jr. Now you make it up by basically getting an offensive lineman to help fit the bill. Buffalo Bills, I did have them taking Adonai Mitchell, and I honestly do think they might piss off the Kansas City Chiefs, and I think they might actually go speed and take Xavier Worthy. Either one of these Texas receivers, they really are going to be very efficient. Now, the Buffalo Bills, I think this is kind of a payback thing for them because their rivalry between them and the Chiefs is very, very strong. And you know what? They want to have with what the Chiefs had with Tyreek Hill, and I think this definitely works for Josh Allen because throwing the deep ball, you're going to need somebody with great route running skills and some speed. Some speed to basically make those over-the-shoulder catches, and I think Xavier Worthy would actually be a pretty damn good pick. Now, the Detroit Lions, they lost out on their corner, but I do think they need to fix up that front line, and I have them taking Jerzon Newton from Illinois because I never understood why Brad Holmes never pulled the trigger and basically go and get an edge rusher. Give me a DT. Give me something up there up on that front line because it's not looking promising, but I think Jerzon Newton, with his body build and his elusiveness, I think the Illinois product, he could definitely serve up to be a really, really good pick in the end for the Detroit Lions and give them exactly with what they were missing to give a little bit more time for Aiden Hutchinson to cook, and you gave him a secondary pressurizing opponent against the offense. Nothing's really changed at all for the Baltimore Ravens. I still have them taking an interior guard and taking Graham Barton. I do think that this is something that they needed to fix up for quite some time. Not a big-time desperate pick. I think this is ultimately trying to serve more protection for Lamar Jackson to run the football, and then at the same time, you're efficiently running the football at the end of the day. And like I said, San Francisco, I think, is probably going to like me with this one. I haven't changed the pick yet. I've got them still taking Troy Fautanu and to solidify that right side because for the 49ers moving forward, Trent Williams, as you already know, an all-pro and a future Hall of Famer at the left tackle position. He's already shutting that down. The right side between the interior guard and the tackle was not good for the Niners, and that kind of accounted for a little bit of those pressures in the Super Bowl. So you go and get Troy Fautanu. You lock down the right side. Sean Feliciano, who you had on the tackle, basically trying to compete up for that position, you move him up to the right interior guard and give him a little bit more extra space. I think also because of the size of John Feliciano, he gives you a little bit more of that interior blockage, so that allows someone like Brock Purdy to have a little bit more time to throw. But then that also means that there's a little bit of another gap that Christian McCaffrey could run through when you're going through run plays. So I think you get Troy Fautanu, you move over John Feliciano onto the right interior side, and then I think that solidifies the line. finally, my last pick, of course, in the second mock draft, the Kansas City Chiefs end up going with Adonai Mitchell because in the end, if the Buffalo Bills end up taking Xavier Worthy, they're going to flip-flop and they're going to take the other Texas product, Adonai Mitchell. And I think Mitchell, he runs really, really good routes and he's got great hands. Not a lot of people really do talk about him as much and they don't really kind of showcase him, but he was actually really, really good and accounted for Quinn Ewers' build at the quarterback position. So either one of those, Xavier Worthy or Adonai Mitchell, they're really, really good Texas products. They're very much